Welcome everyone to the HSJCC webinar today on pre-charge mental health diversion. My name is Dorina Simeonov and I'm a policy analyst at CMHA Ontario and the policy advisor to the Provincial Human Services and Justice Coordinating Committee. So please let us know if you can hear us all right, and if you've got any questions, type them in an answer box. Today's webinar is provided by both CMHA Ontario and with the great help of the Evidence Exchange Network, with Matt Hollingshead's help as well as Rosanna. If you've got a question, again, type it in the chat box, and the PowerPoint will be emailed out after the presentation. We'll send you a link, and a recording of the webinar will also be sent out. And we ask you that you please fill out the feedback survey, which will be provided at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the Provincial Human Services and Justice Coordinating Committee, and then we will get right into our webinar on pre-charge mental health diversion in Durham Region. And then we'll have some question and answer and we want to hear from you. So with me in the room, I've got Constable Scott Logan from the Durham Regional Police Service. I've got Valerie Mussington, who's a court support worker at Durham Mental Health Services, and Yolanda Diston, who is a community mental health nurse at Durham Mental Health Services as well. So the HSJCC was established back in 1997 from a provincial strategy to coordinate human services and criminal justice systems. The strategy was created to respond to a recognized need that we need to better coordinate resources and services across Ontario to provide for individuals who have come into conflict with the law and who have other complex conditions, so things like serious mental illness, developmental disabilities, acquired brain injuries, drug and alcohol addiction, and or fetal alcohol syndrome. So the network is made up of 43 local HSJCCs or committees, 14 regional committees, and a provincial committee. Each of these committees is a voluntary collaboration between folks from the health and social services organizations, as well as community mental health and addictions, partners from the justice sector, including service providers, so correctional service providers, crowns, attorneys, judges, and as well as police officers. We are funded by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. And at the provincial level, the committee consists of 14 regional HSJCC chairs and ex officio members from several organizations, including the Correctional Service of Canada, the Ontario Provincial Police, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, Legal Aid Ontario, and the Community Networks of Specialized Care. We also have ex officio representatives from the 5 founding ministries of the provincial HSJCC. So those are the Attorney General, Children and Youth Services, Community and Social Services, Community Safety and Correctional Services, and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. We have some upcoming webinars in addition to this one. We're trying to have monthly webinars as part of the provincial HSJCC way moving forward. On Thursday, April 30th, we have potentially a webinar on the Hamilton Rapid Response Team, and in May we have one on factors influencing mental health and criminal justice involvement. So those webinars are still being planned out, and you will receive information about them if you're on our mailing list, which I encourage you to join if you're not on it, and we will send out further details about those. So our website is www.hsjcc.on.ca. You can also, for more information on the supporting organizations, CMHA Ontario and EENet, you can go to their websites. And to join the mailing list, please visit that HSJCC website. So now I'm going to pass it to our speakers today. And to start things off, we would love to hear from you folks and see who we have on the line today, who's joining this webinar. So please answer that question there, asking which sector you work in.
Next slide. Hi, it's Yolanda Diston here. Before we begin our webinar, I want to briefly address what our agenda is for, what we're covering today. We're going to discuss why pre-charge diversion, going through the program development, how it came to be, and what it's all about. We'll be talking about program description, criteria of who can meet the program eligibility, and followed by service process, a walkthrough of the process, meeting the individual and how they actually get into the program. We'll be wrapping up after that with outcomes and future plans, and certainly if anybody has any questions at the end, we will be saving some time for that. Okay, why pre-charge? Most importantly, the mental health system is so difficult to navigate, and this is a way of trying to engage those in our own community that are suffering from mental health challenges that are becoming in contact with the criminal justice system. We're able to get those clients directed to appropriate services and sooner rather than later. We've learned by experience, not only by ourselves, but statistically, that the sooner we get somebody engaged with supports, it decreases a revolving door both at the hospital, the criminal justice system, and very importantly, decreased recidivism with police. We have the opportunity to engage with clients that we wouldn't otherwise have contact with when we meet them through the criminal justice system and being contacted by police. It's really more effective symptom management and working with that person to find out what supports are best for them in their own community. Could be in the community or the hospital, and that's what we're working towards figuring out.
Police perspective, we'd like to see the reduced calls for police services. I'll be getting into the types of calls for service that the police would be responding to. The type of criminal offenses that we're referring to will be addressed later on in the webinar. Of course, the reduced load on the court system is going to be a product of reducing the calls and the arrests that the police make. But I love making the point of the positive police contact for that client and their family. I find it's a great opportunity for the police to remind the community that we, the police, can have a positive role in a person's life who could be in a crisis, showing signs and symptoms of suffering from mental illness, and help get them back on track and point in the right direction. And the last point is they have to be held accountable if they have committed a criminal offense. So that's the foundation of the program. Yeah.
I think a lot of times individuals call the police because they don't know what else to do in their situation. So it's a good opportunity for the police to, educate, and having, in our case, Yolanda right there to be able to educate on the forefront is a positive.
Yeah, that's a good point, Val, and just what she's referring to. I work with Yolanda in the MCIT, the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team, respond to police calls for service, anything that has a mental health component. Yolanda and I are attending or trying to get to what we can, and that's where we come in and help educate the frontline officers on this program.
All right, so in basically the direction for the program came from Durham's HSJCC. It started in September 2009 as a pilot project with the partnerships with Durham Mental Health Services, Crown Attorney's Office, and the Durham Regional Police Services. It started out as a Whitby detachment in 2009, and it just had such a positive response that it grew quickly, and in 2010 it was spread to our whole region in Durham.
I just want to make the point that one of the key words is the partnership, that we, the police, cannot do such programs on our own, and these community partnerships are what make it work.
Okay, so the program description. The person, it's a voluntary program, so we have to get the person's buy-in that they actually want to follow through and get connected with the mental health community agencies. So it's not, they actually have to do the work in order to be able to not have the charge laid at the end. So it provides support to individuals who have been identified by the Durham Regional Police. They first have to say that the person is appropriate for diversion, but it takes them from the criminal justice and it gets them connected with the health services that they are going to need. The average length in our program, it's from 3 to 6 months. If someone does really well, then the program can be done in 3 months. That's, they complete all their counseling sessions, whatever they need. And we have up to 5 months until the program, we have to notify the police of the person's success or not success at the 5-month mark, because the police have up to 6 months to lay a charge on an individual. So we notify the police at basically 5 months, and then at this point we've had success, so we haven't had to have any case conferences or anything about the situation.
And we'll be speaking to the success and the statistics towards the end. So the program criteria, it all begins at the street level, so to speak, with a frontline police officer. Like any criminal investigation and grounds to arrest, police need the reasonable probable grounds that a criminal offense has occurred. And they place a person into custody. They are arrested and provide their rights to counsel. Now, this is where the officer makes that judgment call and can recognize that the person is appearing to be suffering from mental illness or is known. We have a number of ways to find these indicators. It could be through our computer checks, that the person has a history with the police of mental health type calls. In searching that person as part of the arrest procedure, they could come across medication in someone's belongings, or there could be the emotional cues displayed by the accused that would suggest to the officer that the person is indeed suffering. And of course, the person could always acknowledge that they are having symptoms. They're experiencing a crisis, or they do suffer from a mental illness. The person, as Val had mentioned, has to agree to the program. They have to commit to meeting with the Durham mental health worker once a week. They have to sign the consent form. That consent form is actually going to be displayed in 2 slides coming up, so we'll go over that at that point. The police officer handling the case has to believe that the person is going to benefit. They can't set that person up for failure. They have to use their discretion. A key component is a victim does not require protection, as in the accused does not have to be held for bail, and they are going to be 18 years or over. I will point out we have utilized the program for someone under 18. It was a 17-year-old that was living more of an adult lifestyle and had the maturity of more of an 18-year-old or an adult, and that was more suitable for this adult pre-charge diversion, opposed to the youth diversion program. Just touching on the victim does not require protection. We've used this program where the victim has been a stranger to the accused, but also a family member to the accused. I just want to cover off some of the offenses. As you will see on the webinar, the theft under $5,000, take motor vehicle, possession of stolen property, mischief and frauds, moderate drug possession, passenger and stolen vehicle, weapons, dangerous, and assault. The two most common that have been utilized for the mental health pre-charge diversion program have been mischief and assault. It is a case-by-case approach. I'm often consulting with uniform officers if it would be appropriate, and I tell officers if they meet the criteria, it's about thinking outside the box and doing some things differently. If you think the person would benefit from this program, let's give it a shot. We have found, with the theft under the shoplifting, there's a noted correlation between depression and chronic shoplifting, so let's get them on track. I've seen this used with a person who comes from a policing background who has been struggling with some mental illnesses and had been shoplifting for her own way of handling her symptoms, and that was recognized and she was put through the program. I just want to point out domestic violence will not qualify. It's recognized that mental illness coupled with violence is a major risk factor. So it has been discussed, and we will not be using it for domestic violence. Consent form. This is the form I was referring to that the person is required to sign. I just want to cover it off. As you see at the top, with the particulars of the event, incident number, the dates, the person's name and address are covered. And it's explained step by step to the offender of what they're signing. That the first point, they have been provided their rights to counsel. And in lieu of being charged, they request the opportunity to participate in a diversion program during mental health services. The fourth point is quite important, that they agree to the transfer of information to and from Durham Regional Police and Durham Mental Health to facilitate my participation. So when we get into the conversation of confidentiality, this is where that's covered off. That they are aware and consent to the information, surveys, and questionnaires completed in the process of the involvement. And they fully and freely consent to participate in the program, and for that purpose shall report to the Durham Courthouse, room 1104. I'd just like to point out, that's not a courtroom. It is an office. We do like the idea that they do report to the courthouse to get that experience of being in the courthouse, and they could have gone that direction and had been attending court, but instead they are not going to be before the courts, but actually meeting with Val or another court support worker outside a courtroom. And it's noted that failure to contact Durham Mental Health or to attend could result in a disqualification from the program. The officer has to put his name, badge number, and the charge at the bottom. And as is noted, I understand that all the above terms and conditions, and they agree with the pre-charge diversion program. And at the bottom, the offender signs the form.
Okay.
So just to review the intake and assessment process, the officer identifies the potential clients. The form is signed that we just reviewed. The officer then completes an arrest report, because they did take that person into custody, they did arrest them. The form, once signed, is scanned into Versadex, the program that Durham Regional Police use. If there's any other police services listening, that's why I want to make mention. It's the Versadex program. And the form is then sent to my office. the mental health unit. And an officer will take the copy of the form and print off the arrest report, which is then sent to the mental health court support workers, Val, or whoever's in the office for that intake. The clients have 7 days to attend that meeting at the courthouse. And like I had mentioned, it's going to be part of experiencing that process of attending court. The date is always going to be on the first Tuesday following the contact with the police between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. So they have a 4-hour window to get there to report.
In regards to the assessment, if I'm actually part of the crisis 911 call and working with Officer Logan or one of the other officers, this is where the benefit of the partnership comes in. Both Val and I being Durham Mental Health Services, during a crisis, I can, or a crisis worker, can identify some of the future supports that might be appropriate for this person, whereas when they attend the courthouse, they might not be so clear, the person might not remember that crisis and what things would be best supports for them. So that's a sharing of information that we are able to do in the best interest of the person because of this crisis.
Right. So then what happens, on the following Tuesday, after they meet with the police and they sign the form, they bring the form with them, and we meet with the individual and we complete an intake assessment. It's a tool that we have with our program, and we go over that this is a voluntary program, and they're made aware at that point that they will have to meet with a case manager on a weekly basis, and then they're given what's called the OCAN assessment, which is the Ontario Common Assessment of Needs, and then we meet with them within a week, and we take up the OCAN, and the case manager meets with the individual, myself, and the client, and we go over the goals of the OCAN, and that's what the case manager works on with the individual. It can be anything from, getting them hooked up with psychiatry, medications, counseling. We also have direct access to Pinewood Services, which is our region's addictions counseling. So we have individual that we can usually get them in for that kind of counseling within like a week or two. We have psychiatry that is attached to our program. So we have that resource also. So we have a lot of services that have direct entry for individuals that come through the pre-charge and our post-charge diversion programs. So in saying that, the individual then will sign a contract with us, and they're very much a part of what they feel they need to get help with, and very much involved in their own care and coming up with a plan. So that's the process from our perspective, that is, like the case managers and the court mental health workers.
And that being the most important thing, I agree, Val, with the earlier somebody with a mental health crisis or maybe new mental health challenge comes into contact with the supports that are tailored to them and that they've identified that is important for their pathway to recovery, the better the prognosis, the better the outcome. And really that's the goal for this whole relationship.
So also the case manager, if the person is not following through, they will notify me. So my role, or the court worker's role, is more, the case manager gets to develop that therapeutic role, where my role becomes more of the liaison between the police and the individual themselves. So if I can be in more of a position to kind of be the bad guy, like you sign the agreement, you have to do this, you have to follow through, or we're going to be notifying the police. And that kind of takes us into The next slide of the accountability.
So as you will see, the time frame for the service is established early on. More severe offenses needs more of a longer service. The client fails to follow through on the program expectations, the police are contacted, usually someone in the mental health unit, to remind them of their obligations. I'll just like to note, though, we do recognize that the person's mental illness could be contributing to why they were not able to follow through and may have missed the appointment. The person could be in hospital or needing hospitalization. If lack of follow-through continues, the case conference is arranged between the police, the Crown Attorney's Office, and the mental health court support worker, and criminal prosecution may proceed. Durham Police are contacted upon completion. I'll usually receive an email from one of the court support workers that John Doe had successfully completed the program. I then enter into our Versadex system and enter a concluding report noting that I've been notified on such date that the person had successfully completed the program and that the diversion is over. Puts the bow on the whole case that we have in the police system.
And it's the individuals that actually, we've only had a couple where we've had to get the police back involved and had them go visit and, kind of remind them that they are going through, they potentially could be charged. But people respond to it, and they feel, I guess, when the police show up again, it's a good reminder that, they do have to follow through with the program, and we have a good relationship with the police that, they trust us that when we tell them that the person's not following through and why they're not, we have a good trusting relationship there.
And in discussing the webinar prior, Val made a good point that there's more flexibility through this process than charging someone and having to lay some sort of breach charge should they be not complying with whatever court order they're on. And that then there's back into the system after breach, and meanwhile it could be their mental health that is the contributing factor to these breaches. This is not the same structure. It's more, as I said, flexible and a door knocking reminder to follow through, meet with the person, the intake worker, and to stay on track. Otherwise, the consequences are a formal criminal charge. Now, we just want to touch on our outcomes.
So, since January 2009, we have had 52 new referrals, and we have a 100% success rate, where everyone has successfully made it through the program and have been connected with the mental health services in the community and have followed through. Currently, we have approximately 9 active clients.
At the end of Durham Regional Police training, we've provided it to the frontline officers in a variety of different ways. We've had a video created with the chief and a member from the Crown's office speaking to the successes, entered in our newsletter, and provide to our Durham Regional Police supervisors and through different training avenues. We have some new recruits that will be definitely trained in this program, and we hope to definitely have it fully utilized. We've received feedback from officers, clients, and service providers. Has been very positive in nature.
Challenges. It would be unrealistic to think that everything is perfect, and every program does come with challenges, so we do want to address those. Starting with the person who we've identified having a mental health challenge, as well as being in contact with the criminal justice system. It's imperative to make sure that that person can appreciate and understand what they're signing and what they're getting into. We do not want to set people up for failure, and this is a work in progress. We're trying to get that through to everybody so we can get more and more people in, maybe it's a matter of spending more time with them to determine whether they do understand and could follow through with such a program. Another challenge is the group that we're working with and what their mental status is at the time of the crisis, the 911 call where police are involved. It could be a dual diagnosis. A person could be under the influence and at that point in time not be able to comprehend what they're signing and getting into, and it's a lost opportunity because they could be really appropriate for that program.
I just want to point out, if the person met the criteria for Durham Regional Police to be apprehended under Section 17 and brought to the hospital, can they still be put through the program? And yes, there are going to be scenarios where the person still has to be held accountable for their actions. As many people know, if someone's going to be apprehended under Section 17, doesn't mean they're actually diagnosed with mental illness. They could be in a situational crisis, and their actions warrant an apprehension to the hospital, but also that they had committed a minor criminal offense, and it could be utilized under those circumstances. Some of the other challenges we've discussed is our clients out of region, that reside outside of region, or in North Durham. Durham Region is quite large, and one of the most northern points being Beaverton, that can be almost an hour-and-a-half drive down to Oshawa. We face the clients that don't have transportation or are not in a position for public transit. And we've handled a lot of the cases at the MCIT level, and trying to balance and ensure these cases are sent down to the court level to Val, because we're also operational in the community responding calls for service. And I also noted that the acceptance at the policing level. We all, well, I know that police don't always like change, and it can be a challenge to get the officers to think outside the box. That besides having the grounds to arrest someone, and supplying that court date, there are other options and ways to handle such calls. And I've seen that on some very interesting calls. The first one I was involved in terms of pre-charge diversion was what we call an instant command call-out. We had an armed person, and so it was handled in the safest manner, involving our tactical support unit, and the person was taken into custody. And it was a large-scale incident, and in the end, it was agreed upon that the diversion program would be appropriate, that this person did not belong in the criminal justice system, and that the pre-charge would be a good fit. The person was successfully put through and completed without any issues, and last time I had checked, has remained off the radar of the police since that program. I can't get into the particulars of the event because I don't want the person identified. Another challenging case was a public mischief endangering life scenario involving someone that put wires across the snowmobile trail. In the end, it boiled down to the person's mental illness being the main contributing factor, and they were successfully entered through the program, and we've had excellent feedback from that subject and the support workers that worked with that person. So future plans for the program. We like to see a coordinator at our end to handle these cases and provide the ongoing training for our frontline officers and new recruits. And be a part of sharing this program with the other police services and service providers throughout Ontario, because we definitely see the benefit and like to see it used everywhere. Obviously, I'd like to increase the utilization of the program throughout Durham Region, and being open to other avenues for this program. And like I mentioned earlier, but thinking outside the box. Could it be used as a form of release from ourselves when someone's brought in? Perhaps. It's something that has to be discussed at other levels. And actually, yesterday, I received information that Durham Regional Police and CMHA are now in a position to sign a protocol to commence this partnership from the North Durham station, the Beaverton Police Station, that they'll be utilizing a similar program, and they'll be servicing those clients in the north that might have those challenges of transportation and getting down to Oshawa. And the contacts for CMHA would be Paul Secord, and at Durham Regional Police, Detective Sergeant Phil Lilly, if you have any further questions on that. I think this is going to bring us to our question and answer period. In past presentations, we've experienced a large volume of a variety of questions, so we've allowed ample time for those questions.
So we received quite a few questions. There's more still coming in. So I will start from the beginning. So Evan asked, how does this program interact or coexist with extrajudicial measures or pre-charge diversion for youth under the Youth Criminal Justice Act?
Right now in Durham Regional Police, we have the Youth Diversion Program that addresses that.
Okay.
And the individual that was 17 that went through, he was transitioning from the youth services to the adult services. So he was going to be turning 18 within a couple of months.
So our next question is from Doha, and she asks, does the person get discharged from this program if they commit an assault or another crime or offense while being on the program?
We've always said that it's very much a case-by-case. That would be something we'd have to meet about and look at the person's complete history and the actual case itself and the notes and what had transpired, and make that determination with all the appropriate people at the table.
Great. Our next question is from Nancy. So how do you determine if the person is capable of consent? And I actually had a question about that too, because you said it was number 4 on your form, but informed consent is very different from just for someone being able to kind of see that one line and know what it means for their information to be shared.
And that's really where either myself, if I'm at the call, or an officer is engaged, determining whether somebody is alert, oriented to time, place, and person, and can comprehend what that conversation is about, giving feedback and discussion in asking appropriate questions.
Yeah, if someone is not comprehending and the officer recognizes that, that would be might be a scenario where they're released unconditionally and brought home, and whoever is in their life is made aware of what had happened and can discuss a plan moving forward with whoever is assisting that person in their life.
Great. So the next question, I believe, is from Karen Tinning. What assessment is completed and what are the qualifications of the assessors? So I think you touched on that a little bit, but did you want to elaborate? Or?
Well, again, case by case, it's whoever is doing it and really doing their assessment with the best intentions, whether it's an officer, whatever training. It could be an MHRO, which is a mental health trained officer, or a road officer. I don't know if you want to speak to that. There's officers that have the mental health.
Yeah, thanks, Yolanda, for reminding me. We have over 100 officers in uniform on the front line right now that have taken our mental health course. It's a week-long course in policing and mental health, and we do definitely cover off this program thoroughly with these officers.
It's definitely not an assessment that is being done for a psychiatric diagnosis. That's only done by a psychiatrist, family doctor, but it's an assessment that is done to ensure somebody's safety and also a plan moving forward.
Yeah, if the police are ever talking about an assessment that they're doing, it's usually assessing if the person meets the criteria for a Section 17 Mental Health Act apprehension.
So the next question is from Karen Summers. She's asking, can probation identify clients in the system now so that if they get further charges in the future, they could be eligible for this program? So have you kind of collaborated with that side of the system?
We have not. That's an excellent point. And I think I like to say there'll be room for future discussions. Again, our unit is also operational, so it's finding the time and making those connections. We hope to have someone in that coordinating position in the near future that could maybe put that in place.
This next question's from Shelley, and it's I think it's fairly specific. So are you ever bound by an undertaking given to a peace officer or an officer in charge? I'm not even sure what that means, but I'm hoping you do.
Are they like, does she mean a Form 2 or something?
No.
Yeah, maybe Shelley, if you can clarify, and we'll come back to this one.
Our contact information is up there, so if we don't supply an appropriate answer, please feel free to reach out to us.
But if you're talking about like the way they're actually released from the police, they're released with the consent form.
There's no conditions that are being put in place. They're not being. The only thing they're bound to do is attend that appointment on the following Tuesday.
Right, and the charge is hanging over their head. It hasn't been laid yet.
Yeah, it's not a formal charge.
But there is the grounds to lay the charge.
Yes. So if they don't comply.
Right.
Okay. So hopefully that addressed that question, but we can follow up. Mamta asks, if it is determined that addictions is the underlying issue during assessment, what occurs for the person? Do they remain in the program?
Yes, they do. That would be exactly what the program is about. If it is an underlying addictions issue, then we have direct access or direct entry to Pinewood, who the contact we have specializes in concurrent disorders, and we can get them in within a week or two, and that's what their actual diversion, like the plan would be, is that they need to follow through with addiction, drug and alcohol counseling.
Great. We have a similar question around whether the program is available for those already on probation or who have a criminal record. I mean, I would guess yes for those who have a criminal record, but yeah,
it's reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and it's for minor offenses, though, the diversion program. So, it would have to be reviewed case-by-case, because from the police perspective, it's all about like protecting, right?
A good example of that would be the shoplifting. There may be a few offenses and charges before anybody identifies that it's a mental health related problem that the person has.
Another scenario that we have had excellent buy-in, so to speak, but in feedback is family dynamics. Police are often called to family disputes that escalate to someone being harmed, someone being assaulted, threats being made. However, the family are strongly against that person being criminally charged. What they want them is to get help. Where our unit has come in the past, or an officer experiencing mental health related calls will recognize, well, we can get this person to the hospital. That doesn't mean that they won't be guaranteed help. They'll be seen by the crisis team and potentially released. However, this pre-charge program is forcing that person into help, being held accountable for their actions, and getting connected to the most appropriate service and what everyone wants to see, what the family members want to see. And again, if they don't fear for their own safety and the person is continuing residing there, it has been used before. One particular case was a family member had armed herself with a knife and had raised it in a threatening manner towards another family member. After spending time with that family, I was fortunate enough to attend that call. The person was placed on the diversion program and was very successful, and that's what the family wanted. They weren't willing to cooperate with the police in terms of the criminal offense and providing statements, but they were very interested in this person being forced, so to speak, into help.
Great. So I'm just going to have a brief reminder for folks to fill out that webinar evaluation survey, and we're going to keep going with questions because we do have some time still. So from Georgian College, I guess this kind of relates to some of the previous questions. Have you had kind of repeat folks go through the program? And, you know, if an individual enters the program, like, how many times can they do that? Can they come back, or is it like a one-shot deal?
We've had one individual out of the 52 go through twice, and the situation was more around behavior in a group home. There were mental health issues and whatnot that were contributing to that, but sometimes a fresh set of eyes to a situation can open up different ideas. So the individual, again, it was a specific case, and they're all reviewed on individual cases. But in that situation, it made sense for the person to go through, because the person's circumstances had changed from living on their own to moving into a group home.
Yeah.
So,
a good point. I believe with that scenario, there's some cognitive impairments involved, and I think it might have been lacking structure in that person's life, and that's what this program does, is puts that structure back in someone's life, some purpose, but also accountability for their actions.
Right. And it helps keep mental health out of the justice system, because it just doesn't belong there. When mental health gets tied up into the justice system, it just gets very complicated for individuals and the family members. They're now in a system they know nothing about, where for people who are mentally ill, it just makes more sense to get them connected with the mental health services.
And I don't want to open this can of worms, but I just want to make the point that unfortunately there is kind of a misconception that if someone may be, or is known to be suffering from a mental illness and commits a criminal offense, that if the police arrest that person, they'll get a forensic court-ordered psych assessment. That is not the case. I don't want to speak out of place. I don't work in the court system at the court level, but that my experience is that it's rare, and not that often, where people are ordered to receive that court-ordered psychiatric assessment. And that's the message that we're really trying to get out through our police service and those that we come in contact with.
Right, we have a lot of scenarios. I work right in the courthouse and deal with this stuff all the time. And basically there's two assessments that you can get through court, and one is a fitness assessment, and that in our region you're sent to Ontario Shores Forensic Unit. However, if you can instruct your counsel, and the margin for that is very low, if you can instruct your counsel, you're not getting that assessment as to what you want to do with your charges. What people seem to forget is that once the individual comes into the criminal justice system, he then or she then has rights, and duty counsel is there to protect those rights. So the other assessment is it's a defense. It's a not criminally responsible. It's a 30-day assessment, but again, the defense lawyers are, they have their opinions, and if the person doesn't want to kind of go down that route, the defense lawyers or duty counsel will follow through with what the individual, like how they want to proceed with their charges. So the person, like the loved ones, police officers, like different people can have great intentions of, advising of the assessments through court, but it just doesn't happen. So then you end up with someone who's sitting in bail court, the family basically, or loved ones sitting in bail court. They're frustrated because they thought that the individual was going to get help, and all they're getting is really a criminal record out of this, where in not every situation, but in some situations, the pre-charge would be the diversion program, keep them right out of the system, and that's kind of what makes more sense. But anyways, it comes down to just educating and understanding the whole system.
Thank you for outlining those questions for us. So the next question is from Carol, and she's asking if offenses under the Highway Traffic Act are eligible. No. So that's a no. The next question is from Jonathan. He's asking what kind of training is done with police officers to support appropriate client identification. I feel like you covered that. And so who conducts the training and how is it sustained? How have you managed buy-in from the police? So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
As I mentioned, we offer the week-long mental health response officer course to frontline officers, and I like to say our goal is to get every officer trained and to obtain this course. And it's not myself providing this course. We have a number of service providers that come in and speak to the officers, but also I'd say 50% of the course is also those with lived experience who come and speak to their backgrounds and experiences with the police and the system. We have annual requalification training, scenario-based training with definitely a mental health component. Our supervisors receive regular training that our mental health unit is going to be a part of. Our recruits are getting extensive training in mental health.
Great. So the next question is how is the service plan communicated to the hospital team once a patient is admitted? And I think that's really specific. I don't know if we didn't talk about, I mean, going through this pre-charge diversion program does not mean you're going to get admitted to hospital, just like, which is what you just said. And that's a misconception that you're trying to kind of...
Yeah, because the goal is to support somebody in their own community and really only attend the hospital if it's that extreme inability to care for themselves, threat to themselves or others.
Yeah.
So you're not only diverting away from the criminal justice system, you're also trying to divert away from hospitals in a way.
Yeah, that's how our unit operates. I mentioned earlier that it is recognized that the person's mental health could place them in a hospital setting, and that's recognized. We're fortunate enough that Durham Mental Health have employees in the hospital setting where there would be communication perhaps from the mental health work at courts to the person in the hospital about the situation that person might be in.
You know, as best we can with the limitations of the Privacy Act, making sure that person gets seamless care and the support that they need.
Great. So there's a housing question. So is this a challenge for clients, and how do you support a person in the program without housing, or maybe they've lost housing because of, due to the importance of that basic need for success? So is that part of the pre-charge diversion?
Durham Mental Health Services has crisis support, which we have 2 houses that have 8 beds. So if housing is an issue, we would use a shelter. We would use our crisis services if a bed's available, and we just work with what we have. But to date, everyone has had housing.
Yeah, and again,
our program.
Yeah, and it could be another thing that's identified as one of the precipitating factors, and again, part of what the treatment plan would be either by court workers, case manager, or that person directed to have support in finding housing.
So I think you mentioned there's 52 folks that have gone through the program. So what's your sense in terms of a person's asking if you think the program is being underutilized? How is it? I mean, do people know about it? How do you do you think more people could be going through it?
Well, I definitely think there could be more clients put through the program. We still see people going through the criminal justice system for minor criminal offenses that have underlying mental health issues, diagnosis, and there's definitely room for expansion, no doubt.
Yeah, change is hard for anyone. So, you know, putting out a program and trying to get the buy-in and, you know, the whole big picture of it, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So it's a process.
And the comfort level, which we do have to identify, because you can't say that everybody has the same comfort level despite having the same education. So, you know, we have to be supportive of what anybody's decision is, whether they choose to put somebody through it or choose not to because they're concerned that they're not well enough.
Great. So the next one is a funding question, and I know broadly, I mean, pre-charge diversion is something that generally happens, you know, at the local level with local champions. There's no kind of, you know, government broad funding that pushes for pre-charge diversion. So what kind of program funding supports our workers doing those assessments and that ongoing diversion? What is it, just something that you've taken on, you know, as part of your day-to-day?
That's correct. Everyone involved in the program, to my understanding, there's no funding that has been provided. We all, I guess, from our passion of doing our job, donate our time to do it.
Yeah. Great. So, and somewhat related question from Enoch, has the program been evaluated at all? Or are you thinking maybe in the future to evaluate it?
That would be a question for our supervisors.
Yeah, I kind of like evaluated in, I guess
Like
I have a question back.
Yeah, so
We have 100% success, and
yeah.
no, there has been no, like we have one person who went through the process again, but we have had no one re-offend other than that individual. So I think those stats are pretty, like the need for evaluation, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
At the police level, the consent form that we reviewed has been updated, and we just continue providing as much education to our officers as we can.
Yeah. And ongoing statistics are collected for not only the diversions from the hospital, diverting officers, free them up for the road by them, you know, following through and entering into this program. You know, it only takes one officer to then continue with the paperwork. Those stats are ongoing collections.
That's great. So it sounds like a fantastic program, and of course there are many more questions that we're not going to be able to get to today. So I want to thank our presenters, Scott, Valerie, and Yolanda, for their amazing presentation and their great feedback and answering those questions. If those of you who didn't get your questions answered would like to contact one of our speakers, their information is on the slide there, or you can contact one of us and we can put them in touch with them. And we also would encourage you to check out the video. There's a video link on the left side there, and it's a video, I believe, from the United States. Maybe, Scott, you can talk about it.
Yeah, it's a video that speaks to the benefits of their mobile crisis teams and the diversions that they're using in the U.S. The statistics that they provide are American, unfortunately, but it really paints a complete picture of the success of these programs. Really know to have a higher number of these types of calls due to their population. And I highly encourage everyone to have a look at that video.
Great. Thank you. And thank you everyone on the phone.